For centuries, a single grain powered empires. One stalk produces 50,000 seeds, enough to feed millions at the roof of the world and to fuel runners across mountains. After the Spanish conquest, growing it could cost you your hands or your life. Why did colonial rulers fear this plant so much that they made it punishable by death? And how did that decision shape food, famine, and freedom for generations to come? The answer begins with the grain itself. Amaranth stands apart in the plant world for its sheer abundance and power. One stalk can yield as many as 50,000 seeds, each just 1 millimeter across, yet packed with more than just calories. Unlike wheat or corn, amaranth delivers a complete protein, every essential amino acid in every seed, making it as nutritionally dense as milk or meat. Its leaves hold more calcium than milk and more iron than spinach. This is a grain that thrives where others fail, growing at high altitudes, in poor soils, and without irrigation. In the hands of Andean and Mesoamerican farmers, amaranth's relentless productivity became the foundation for feeding entire civilizations, sustaining millions from a single harvest. At the heart of the Inca Empire, amaranth was more than a crop. It was the engine of survival. Fields of this grain climbed the Andes, producing reliable harvests at elevations above 11,000 feet, where few other staples could thrive. Agricultural records and archaeological evidence point to a population of nearly 12 million people sustained by a patchwork of terraces growing amaranth alongside potatoes and quinoa. The empire's legendary courier network depended on this nutrition. Chasqui runners, relaying messages and goods across mountain passes, relied on pinole, a high-energy mix of toasted amaranth flour, to fuel journeys that spanned 150 miles in a single day. The endurance of these runners and the sheer scale of the population they served was possible only because of the grain's unmatched ability to deliver protein, minerals, and calories in even the harshest climates. The scale and resilience of Inca society rested in no small part on the quiet power of amaranth. Spanish chroniclers arriving in 1532 found themselves confronted by ceremonies they could not comprehend. In the heart of Tenochtitlan, Aztec priests shaped enormous effigies of their gods from amaranth dough, binding the seeds with honey and, at times, human blood. These figures, sometimes towering as high as a man, became the centerpiece of festivals where entire communities gathered to break and eat the sacred grain together. For the conquistadors, these rituals were not simply foreign, they were heresy. Bernardino de Sahagun's Florentine Codex describes the Spanish horror at what they saw as blasphemy, fueling a fear that the power of amaranth extended far beyond the field. In their eyes, this grain was not only nourishing bodies, but sustaining a spiritual resistance that threatened the very foundations of colonial rule. In 1577, the Spanish crown issued an ordinance that made growing amaranth a capital crime. Colonial officials enforced the ban with public burnings of fields and seed stores, sending a clear warning to anyone who dared defy royal authority. Chroniclers described punishments that included the severing of hands for a first offense and execution for a second. The message was unmistakable. This was not just about suppressing a crop, but about breaking the backbone of indigenous autonomy. By targeting amaranth, the Spanish aimed to erase a source of nourishment and resilience, forcing entire communities into dependence on foreign grains and colonial supply lines. Wheat arrived in the Americas as more than a crop. It became an economic weapon. Spanish authorities funneled confiscated land and labor into wheat fields, replacing amaranth with a grain that demanded irrigation, European seed, and grinding mills. Colonial grain merchants took control of the supply, issuing flour from guarded warehouses and recording every sack in ledgers bound for the silver mines of Zacatecas and Potosi. For indigenous communities, survival now hinged on access to imported wheat. Miners were paid not in coin, but in flour, forcing families into the fields and mills to earn their daily bread. Amaranth's ban was not just a religious act, it was a calculated move to dismantle food independence and tie entire populations to colonial supply chains. By 1600, the indigenous population of central Mexico had fallen from an estimated 25 million to barely 1 million. The collapse was swift and staggering, driven by waves of smallpox, measles, and typhus, but deepened by the destruction of native crops and the forced shift to European grains. Fields that once fed entire civilizations lay abandoned or burned. Traditional farming knowledge faded as terraces fell into ruin, and access to food became tied to colonial warehouses and wheat rations. For millions, the loss of amaranth was not just a blow to diet, but a rupture in the fabric of survival. The demographic devastation reshaped the land and its people, leaving only fragments of a world built on the strength of a single grain. In the shadow of the Andes, amaranth refused to vanish. Elders guarded their seeds through decades of silence, trusting in the grain's remarkable longevity. Some seeds, tucked away in clay jars, remained viable for 40 years or more. Harvests took place under moonlight, hands moving quietly through the stalks to avoid the attention of colonial patrols. Each seed saved was an act of quiet defiance, a promise to future generations that this grain would not be lost. Oral traditions carried the knowledge of how to thresh and winnow by hand, how to hide the harvest, how to wait for safer times. Survival depended on secrecy, patience, and the hope that one day the fields could grow openly again. By the mid-1970s, the scientific world began to take notice of amaranth's forgotten power. The National Academy of Sciences, in a 1975 report, described amaranth as a promising, underexploited crop with high nutritional value and resilience in harsh conditions. Trials at the Rodale Institute in 1979 confirmed what Andean farmers had known for centuries, that amaranth could yield as much as 3,000 pounds per acre, even without fertilizer or irrigation. NASA, searching for foods to support astronauts on long-duration missions, selected amaranth in 1984 for its dense nutrition and adaptability, citing its ability to lower blood sugar and cholesterol while providing complete protein. These endorsements from leading institutions validated the grain's extraordinary benefits, moving it from secrecy to the scientific spotlight. Amaranth's promise is hemmed in by modern obstacles. Industrial combines, designed for bigger grains, let amaranth slip through, wasting nearly half the crop. Corn and soy are propped up by billions in subsidies. Amaranth stands alone. No government backing, no patents, no corporate push. Its open-pollinated seeds resist ownership. In the United States, a $3 packet offers 1,000 seeds. Plant 10, and by harvest you'll have hundreds of thousands more. No machinery needed. Strip the seed heads into a bucket, winnow with a fan, and store the seeds dry. Legal to grow and save in USDA zones 3 through 10, amaranth needs no permission. Each handful of seeds is quiet resistance. A step back toward food sovereignty, patch by patch. Amaranth exposes who controls our food and who profits when we forget. Today, a handful of seeds still threatens empires built on dependence. The choice is simple: plant freedom or buy captivity.